There comes a moment in your life when you have to stop explaining, stop negotiating, and start choosing you. Some people don't deserve a warning. They've had chance after chance to respect your growth, and they kept pulling you back into the same pain, the same patterns. You don't owe them another conversation. You owe yourself freedom. Growth requires separation. And if you want to rise, you can't carry dead weight. Cut them off silently, powerfully, and watch how quickly your energy returns. Your future demands clarity, and sometimes clarity begins with a clean cut. No drama, no warning, just decision. Final and unstoppable. Most people don't even realize it, but they spend their entire lives reacting. They're constantly putting out fires, crises at work, issues in their relationships, financial stress, health scares, and they believe that this is what life is supposed to be. But there's a massive difference between solving a problem and simply chasing fires. When you're caught in the cycle of reacting to everything around you, you rarely take the time to ask the most important question. Is this the real problem or just a symptom of something deeper? That question alone can shift everything, because what looks like a problem on the surface, missed deadlines, arguments, low energy, lack of motivation, is often just the smoke. The fire is still burning underneath, and until you address it, it will keep coming back stronger and hotter. You can spend your life getting really good at managing chaos, but that doesn't mean you're solving anything. It just means you're surviving well. And survival is not the goal. Progress is, growth is, mastery is. Chasing fires is exhausting because you're always one step behind. You're constantly under pressure, constantly stressed, always trying to fix what's broken. And the worst part, it becomes familiar. It starts to feel normal. So instead of asking, why does this keep happening, people settle into the rhythm of chaos and convince themselves they're being productive. But when you live like that, you're not solving, you're spinning, and the cycle never ends. Solving real problems requires you to pause, zoom out, and go deeper. It means tracing the pattern to its source and being honest with yourself about what's truly driving the issue. That takes courage. It's uncomfortable. It's slower at first, but it's the only way to build something sustainable. Anyone can act when the fire's already blazing, but powerful people develop the awareness to notice the smoke early. They ask better questions. They refuse to accept surface level fixes. They look for patterns, not incidents. And because of that, they don't just patch the hole, they redesign the whole system. So the next time something blows up in your life, stop and ask yourself, am I solving the real problem or am I just reacting to the pain it caused? Because the truth is, most of the fires you keep chasing are just trying to wake you up to something deeper, something you've been avoiding, something that needs to change. And if you ignore it, it'll keep showing up in a different form, maybe through a different person, but always with the same lesson. Solve the root or suffer the repeat. There's a distinct difference between living your life reactively and living it strategically, but most people never take the time to notice which one they're operating from. When you're in reactive mode, life feels like a series of emergencies. You're constantly jumping from one issue to the next, barely catching your breath. Your calendar is full, your mind is racing, and your energy is always being drained by the next demand. And the dangerous part is, it feels like you're doing something important. It feels like movement. But just because you're moving doesn't mean you're moving forward. Reactivity is a trap disguised as productivity. And if you don't get conscious about it, it will consume you. Strategic living is the opposite. It's calm, it's intentional, it's rooted in clarity and purpose. When you live strategically, you're not running from one fire to another hoping to survive the day. You're building a plan that eliminates those fires before they even start. It's not that problems disappear, it's that you become so effective in managing your focus, your priorities, and your standards that the problems never have a chance to take control. You anticipate, you prepare, you act, not react. Most people live reactively because they've been conditioned to. School teaches us to respond to bells, deadlines, and external validation. Work environments often reward urgency over effectiveness. We're praised for being busy rather than being effective. And because of that, we build lives where we're constantly managing breakdowns. But what if the goal wasn't to get better at handling crises? What if the real victory was designing a life where fewer crises exist in the first place? Living strategically doesn't require superhuman discipline. It requires a decision to no longer be ruled by emotion, urgency, or outside noise. It's about creating space to think, to prioritize, and to act in ways that are aligned with what actually matters. It's recognizing that every time you put your energy into chasing a fire, that's energy taken away from building something that lasts. Firefighting may make you feel needed, but strategy will make you unstoppable. So ask yourself, are you living by design or by default? Are you waking up each day with a clear mission and executing on it? Or are you just waiting to see what explodes next and hoping you can keep up? One path will drain you, the other will define you. And the moment you choose to stop reacting and start leading your life with strategy, everything begins to shift. There's something strangely seductive about urgency, that buzzing feeling of being needed, the adrenaline rush of jumping into a problem, the immediate reward of fixing something. It makes you feel important, alive, in control. But here's the trap. Urgency is addictive. And like any addiction, it fools you into believing you're making progress when you're really just spinning your wheels. Chasing fires gives the illusion of productivity, but it robs you of clarity. It pulls you into a reactive rhythm where you never get ahead, never slow down, and never solve the real issues at the core of your life. People don't talk about it enough, but many are emotionally addicted to being busy. They can't sit still. They can't say no. They always need a crisis to manage because deep down, they've connected their worth to being the one who fixes things. It becomes an identity, the hero in chaos, the problem solver in disaster. But when that becomes who you are, what happens when things are actually calm? You feel uncomfortable, restless, even lost. So unconsciously, you create more fires, you overcommit, you procrastinate until things become urgent. You wait until the last minute, not because you have to, but because that rush becomes familiar. This addiction to urgency keeps you locked in cycles of overwhelm, cycles of burnout, cycles of half-solved problems that keep reappearing, because instead of designing systems that prevent the chaos, you keep feeding it. You treat your day like a series of emergencies rather than opportunities to grow and lead. And the more you normalize that lifestyle, the harder it becomes to break free from it. Eventually, you forget what peace feels like. You forget what it's like to work proactively, to think long-term, to breathe. True power comes from being able to slow down even when everything around you is speeding up. It comes from saying, I don't need chaos to feel valuable. I don't need pressure to be productive. I can create results from clarity, not just intensity. That's where real transformation begins. Because when you're no longer driven by urgency, you can finally operate from vision. You can start creating, not just reacting. You can start building a life that's not on fire every week. So take a moment and ask yourself, are you addicted to urgency? Are you always chasing what's loudest instead of what's most important? Because until you break that pattern, no matter how hard you work, you'll always end up in the same place. Exhausted, stuck, and wondering why nothing ever changes. A problem-solving mindset doesn't start with having all the answers. It starts with training yourself to ask the right questions. Most people operate on autopilot, reacting emotionally when challenges hit. They get frustrated, overwhelmed, or discouraged. And their immediate instinct is to either escape the problem or fix it as fast as possible. But real growth, lasting, meaningful change, only happens when you shift from reacting emotionally to thinking strategically. You have to learn to pause, breathe, and approach problems with clarity instead of panic. Because emotion without direction is chaos, but emotion with structure becomes fuel for breakthrough. When you develop a problem-solving mindset, you don't see problems as threats. You see them as signals, information pointing you to something that needs attention. You don't rush to put on a bandage, you investigate. You become curious. Why is this happening again? What's the real pattern here? What am I not seeing? This shift changes everything. You go from victim to creator, from overwhelmed to empowered. You stop playing defense in your own life and start taking the offensive. Instead of waiting for the next crisis to hit, you get ahead of it. You anticipate, you prevent, you lead. But that kind of thinking doesn't happen by accident. It's built through intentional habits. You train yourself to look deeper. You slow down your emotional reactions long enough to make intelligent decisions. And most importantly, you begin to value solutions over stories. Because most people don't solve problems. They recycle them. They get stuck telling the same story over and over about why things aren't working, why they feel stuck, why they can't move forward. And every time they repeat it, they reinforce the very pattern they want to break. But a problem-solving mindset is about disrupting that story. It says, okay, I see the story. Now let's change the strategy. You can't control every problem life throws at you, but you can always control how you approach it. That's the difference between those who stay stuck and those who grow. It's not about intelligence or talent. It's about your approach. If you train your mind to respond with intention instead of impulse, if you build the discipline to analyze instead of assume, if you prioritize resolution over reaction, there's almost no problem you can't navigate. So the real question isn't whether you have problems in your life. Everyone does. The real question is, how are you thinking about them? Are you solving them from a place of power or just reacting from fear and frustration? The choice is yours every single time. Most people think that solving a problem means fixing what's broken in the moment. They patch the hole, calm the crisis, and move on until it happens again and again. That's because they're focused on solutions, not systems. A solution might stop the bleeding temporarily, but a system stops it from happening at all. Problem solvers solve the same problem 10 times. Problem solvers solve it once by building something stronger. That's the difference between people who are constantly overwhelmed and those who operate with peace and power. You don't need another quick fix. You need structure. You need systems that remove decision fatigue, create consistent outcomes, and prevent unnecessary fires before they even begin. When you install a system in your life, your business, your habits, or your relationships, you create predictability, you create flow, you create freedom. Think about it. If every day you have to figure out how to eat healthy, stay focused, or manage your time, you're burning energy on basic decisions. But if you create a system, a meal plan, a morning routine, a time-blocked calendar, you've already made the decision once, and now it works for you instead of against you. Systems remove the emotion from the equation. When something goes wrong, you don't panic. You evaluate. You check the system. Where did it break? What needs to be adjusted? You don't fall into the same old cycle of blame, guilt, or excuses. You go to work on the structure. That mindset alone is a game changer. It moves you from being reactive to being resilient. And more than that, it creates sustainability. Because the goal isn't to win once. The goal is to win consistently, over time, under pressure, without burning out. Now, building systems isn't always exciting. It's not flashy. It takes time, thought, and repetition. But it's the single greatest investment you can make in any area of your life. Systems are the silent force behind every high performer, every strong relationship, every thriving business. And yet most people never take the time to build them. Why? Because they're too busy putting out fires. They're trapped in the cycle of urgency, thinking they don't have time to slow down and create something that lasts. But if you don't make time to build systems, you'll be forced to make time to manage chaos. The choice is simple. Do you want to keep solving the same problem every week? Or do you want to design your life in a way that those problems can't survive? That's the shift from temporary control to permanent transformation, from effort to efficiency, from firefighting to freedom. And it starts the moment you stop fixing problems and start building systems that make those problems irrelevant. Everything changes the moment you take ownership. As long as you're pointing fingers at circumstances, people, timing, or luck, you're giving away your power. You're saying, this is happening to me instead of I'm happening to it. And nothing will ever truly shift in your life until you own the structure, not just the fire. Fires are loud and urgent, but they're symptoms. The real cause is often buried in the systems you've accepted, the patterns you've allowed, and the standards you've settled for. That's what needs your attention. That's what you must own. Taking ownership isn't about blaming yourself. It's about becoming radically responsible for your outcomes. It means accepting that even if something isn't your fault, it's still your responsibility to change it, because no one's coming to save you. And that's not a reason to be afraid. It's a reason to wake up. It means you hold the key. You have the ability to shift direction at any moment. But that only happens when you stop reacting to the fire and start redesigning the system that allowed it to exist. Ownership demands that you stop making excuses, even the reasonable ones. It challenges you to drop the story and pick up the strategy. You may not control every variable, but you always control your response. You always control your habits, your focus, your energy, your standards. When you raise those standards and refuse to tolerate the things you once accepted, everything around you starts to rise to meet that new level. People treat you differently, results begin to align, and what once felt like chaos starts to feel like clarity, not because the world got easier, but because you got stronger. This shift in mindset turns problems into projects. It transforms overwhelm into opportunity. Suddenly, every fire becomes a lesson. Every setback becomes feedback. And instead of avoiding responsibility, you begin to crave it, because you've learned that responsibility is power. It's how you move from being a passive participant in your own life to being the designer of it. That's where real fulfillment lives. Not in perfection, not in control, but in knowing that you're the one steering the ship. Even when the sea gets rough, you're not at the mercy of the waves. You've got a hand on the wheel and your eyes on the horizon. So the next time something breaks down, whether it's a relationship, a routine, or a result, don't just rush to fix it. Step back. Ask yourself, where did I hand over my power? Where did I lower my standards? What part of this structure did I allow? And then fix that. Because when you take full ownership, you stop chasing fires. And you start building a life where fewer fires ever have to exist.